Yes, let's get ready to rumble. The Supercars Finals race begins with the Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500 this weekend. Can the Fords upset the apple cart and eliminate all three of the Camaros in the first of the final series? I guess we will find out. Hello, Damo. This is it. The very first final series. Whoa, mate, 7 Fords against 3 GMs. What do we got? Come on. We got this, right?
We would not have, you wouldn't read about it, being so competitive and crying parity, and yet we end up with 7 Fords and 3 Camaros. Thank you, Brock.
Be very, very quiet.
I am a little, despite Supercars not really maximizing or capitalizing on this campaign, I am excited, crunching some numbers and having a quick think about what it might all end up looking like. This is very cool. We're in the final series, and of all the places where, hang on, quote Mark Scaife, was it a concrete canyon or something? I don't know, whatever he does, whatever his buzzword is that we'll hear over the weekend. But basically, they're going to be bouncing off walls, so there is a fair bit of jeopardy involved, I think, for some of these in the top 10.
It's bloody exciting. I'm pumped for it. This is uncharted territory, a level of desperation we haven't seen in this category. And I think that is what makes this whole thing tantalizing for me. I'm loving it. I'm ready for it. Come on, bring it on. I want it. Wow. I want it. All the Camaros in the fence.
That Bathurst really got you set up, didn't it, mate? It's been very hard to watch other forms of racing that are not as exciting after seeing such a great Bathurst. So, yes. I'm excited about this too.
We're still going to do a podcast on Formula One. So if you are watched and you're subscribed and all that, make sure you tune into the F1 because we're going to be recording that one next. All right.
And that's a doozy.
So let's get back to the finals, mate. All the momentum swung, in the moment. We switched from the sprint to the enduro, and now it's likely we're going to see another swing again.
Wow. A swing?
A swing.
Not too much. It's just all Mustang. That's what you're talking about, right? You're right. This could be the most open kind of weekend of the season, because what does the form guide look like, after we've now concluded the Enduro Cup? That didn't really play out the way that we were expecting. Some of those teams that have been dominating did not dominate. And we've had a whole random bunch of cars and teams jump into the fore. Mate, Gold Coast could literally serve up anything. Who do you reckon's most likely to fall over this weekend, mate?
If I look at a form guide right now, and regardless of his race at the mountain, I'm probably still backing Kostecki. I think he's probably the strongest suitor at the moment, and he loves this track in particular. So I think I'm still in Team Kostecki at the moment. I mean, Sandown's going to be completely different, but for Gold Coast, I'm saying I'm Team Kostecki.
I do want to have Kostecki up there because they have been that momentum's been building, and it would just be great to start seeing him, move forward into that championship or into the final system. But I've just got that question mark over DJR. Like, can they as a team deliver the car that he needs? And I guess I know George Cummins he'll be all over it as well, but the rest of the team really needs to be having a really mint weekend for this to kind of work out.
I think that's just standard across the board. I think everyone can't afford to have a messy pit stop. I mean, we go back to Chaz last year at this round where he had the trouble with, the dash and the pit stops, and that's where his championship really fell apart. So it is a big event. I mean, that was in a normal championship round. We're talking about finals where you can just fall off, like literally fall off the edge of a cliff in one round and it's over. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I guess with the Kostecki thing is that he's one of only two that doesn't have a teammate in the top 10. So,
yeah, valid.
This gives possibly a little bit of an edge if Davison can either get up amongst it and be kind of holding back people, fencing people. I don't know.
Would you have money on Davison getting up there or Reynolds, who is the other outlier in that circumstance? Because you've got Anton in the 10, but Reynolds out, and he loves this track. So I would have money that Reynolds could cause some strife in the 10 this weekend.
I think if you're looking at in the 10, Reynolds is more of a better bet. But what about for your people like Will Brown who don't seem to qualify that well and are sometimes on the outside hanging around where Wilbur's been hanging around, in that 10 to 15 bracket? That is where it could get interesting. I'll say interesting.
Interesting. God, you could have come up with a better word than that. Interesting. I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
I think for anyone who doesn't qualify well, those guys who don't have anything to play for, so to speak, and just want results could cause massive issues because they're not, when I watch NASCAR, and I know I refer to NASCAR too often these days, but the likes of like SVG, regardless of what people think of him, when it comes to like finals, that he has utmost respect for his rivals that are racing in those final series and gives breathing room and so forth for those people. I don't feel like we're going to have that. I feel like we've got friends in the pit lane, but pricks on track.
It does also come down to the DSO, cams, etc., almost for Australia. What are they going to allow? Are they going to be like hypersensitive and a small nudge is going to be penalties? Or are they still going to allow them to kind of race and then serve out or dish out maybe a higher or the greatest penalty they possibly can on something that they dish? So that is another variable that will need to be looked at because, I mean, it's all good and well to talk about the other team members of those two drivers, but what about, your Matt Stone Racings where, Cam Hill might end up getting up in the mix and he doesn't care because he's got nothing to play for. He just wants to push forward, maybe get a podium. And he might do a bit of a bump and run or he might, put someone in the fence. It could be of that nature.
Yeah, we're not before everyone comes, we're not saying that people are going to fence people. Although we're jokingly saying that it'd be funny if all the Camaros went out. But the thing is that when you've got nothing to play for other than your sponsors, race wins, you're just going to go for it. And everybody else is trying to battle within a battle, so to speak. So it's a race within a race, which can cause so much trouble. And I think we're going to be treated. I think it's going to be a good weekend of racing. We might see some surprises, some out earlier than we predict. And it might not be just the case that the guys who finished 8th, 9th and 10th just go out. I don't think that would be the case at all.
Well, I guess, when you throw in those variables of people are having to fight through the pack, like if Will Brown, doesn't sort out his qualifying, or you've got someone like Ryan Wood, who's obviously at the tail end of the finals in the points, but tends to be a little bit of that hit and miss. And if he's going to hit, he's going to be way up the front. And suddenly, we could see at the end of this, we could have some big names that are just out of the finals altogether. So,
which is crazy.
There's a lot to play for.
There is a lot to play for, but comment below. Can the Fords gang up on the Camaros and eliminate them all before Sandown? Just like this video if you think they can.
Ford boy.
Just do it. If you're a Ford boy, like this video and the Camaros can go out. Yeah, we can do this, right? Power of the people. All right. Let's move on to the finals pressure because we have sort of partially spoken about it. That elimination aspect is going to bring a different dimension, a different dynamic to these races, as we discussed. Do you think we'll see desperate moves, and do we think they'll come off, or do you think it's likely that it's a binning situation and we have chaos?
I think there's going to be a fair bit of caution, especially on that first race. So the first one, to point out, like we've got two races, both are worth 150 points for the winner. And then I guess the margins that we're talking about down the field, there is some significant difference if you are 5th or 15th in this. Like you can basically jump half your field and push into that top half of the championship if you can keep yourself in that top part and some of your competitors are falling behind. I think it's going to be a bit conservative. And then what I'm really looking for is on that Sunday race, well, actually Sunday qualifying, is seeing where people are, and then we can make a bit of a gauge on, okay, who's going to be the ruthless one, who's going to be. I've got to pass 5 cars here, otherwise I'm out of the finals, and that's what I'm hoping we'll be able to track through the telecast, but also we can keep tabs on it, because that's what you need to watch for.
Hopefully Supercars have done a better job in the lead up to this one, whereby showing us some sort of graphic so we can see how it is playing out live. And then we could actually, all just get excited or, disappointed depending on the way, because it's only going to go one way or the other.
Yeah.
But this finals has brought excitement levels that we haven't seen in the championship for a while. I know there's a lot of people that are pissy with it, but I think they're wrong. I think you got to give it a chance. And yes, it's probably going to go through some iterations where it changes year on year just to, finesse it. But I actually think for most, it's feeling pretty good.
We sort of touched on it, but the stewards are going to be a crucial part of this whole thing. What we don't want is some sort of controversy that pushes someone in or out of the final system that the public gets angry about. That's really where I think that they've got to be super careful. A lot of pressure on the teams and drivers and on the stewards. Yeah.
Do we, as a whole, and I say we as in the fan base, you and I, guys, we're all in together, and girls, plus the stewards, chew a bit of concrete and harden the fuck up and just allow things to play out and not meddle so much in controversy. Because if I think back to 2006, which still haunts me, at Phillip Island, where Rick Kelly punted Lowndes into Todd Kelly, and how that unfolded, and the weakest piss penalty, and everyone being in uproar. Like, do we just gloves off? Let's go NASCAR. Let's have a go and see how this goes. I mean, they had the Roeville cars coming backwards across the line. I mean, we're not going to get that in supercars because they can't get reversed fast enough. But you want to play into it. You want to play it up a little bit. So you probably need to let it go. And I think as a general public, we probably need to let it go a little bit as well, so that supercars can let it go, and let's have some awesome racing in the road home. Roadmap home. I don't think I said that very well at all.
I know what conceptually you meant. And I guess what we need is the public.
Yes.
So not that supercars will ever watch this, but if you do, let's be really transparent. So from Motorsport Australia and all the officials and stewards, communicate that to supercars. The telecast need to tell the people, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're looking for. And that way, there's going to be no surprises or elements or expectations that the fans have of it's been adjudicated in one way. And if they're going to maintain it, because I highly doubt they'll give you your wish of being a bit more gloves off. But if they're going to maintain the way it is, just tell everybody. There's no changes from the way we're rolling. We're allowing some freedom to race, but if you step over the mark, we'll go. And there are always going to be challenges. People are still on the fence, either side of the fence, about the Golding Cooper Murray thing. So, yeah, well, I was quite surprised hearing Shane SVG talking about, mate, that was a fair bump. We could just let it go. I was really devastated for him. And I thought, that sounds like the Shane we know.
Very, very much the Shane we know. But then he is also acclimatized to the way of life in America, whereby those things are really just play on. Because as he said, I think he even said in the pod that when he was racing Kyle Larson, he gave him a rub up, and Kyle didn't like it, wasn't very appreciative, so he made sure that he served him a couple of times before Shane eventually got past, and that's all fair, right? There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's the sort of level we need to get to. It's being able to bump and rub, but you can't fence someone, I guess, is probably the line you draw.
I've seen a fair bit of that. So
So who's going to succumb to the pressure, Damien? Which teams do you think are likely to falter? And to extend that further, which drivers do you think are likely to falter as well?
Let's stick with I'll go with the team stuff first. I have concerns, as I mentioned. I think Shell, it could be a problem. They have been getting better, and I really hope that Brody kind of delivers that magic that he has, where he just brings everybody in and in line, and all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and we just really make sure that we're doing the right thing for him, because that is a bit of a concern. We've seen challenges, or Team 18 have had some up and downs with their pit performance. Sometimes the way they roll out with a bit of strategy, if they're not on, if they don't roll out of the truck fast. So that could be one to watch. Typically that has been the case, but they have been getting much better as some of the background GM stuff happens. So they're another one. I think if I was to say like the rough diamond, I think the ones that we really need to keep an eye on, Penrite, I think they just, as we mentioned last week with the Bathurst, 2 weeks ago with the Bathurst thing, they just managed to do the team pit stuff really well at the crucial times. So I think that could be the rough diamond to keep an eye on.
I'll start with driver first. I think for me, Will Brown is the one that I'll be watching very heavily. He is the most likely to miss the 10 and be the most likely to be in a collision with somebody else or have no fault of his own type thing and get taken out. And that poses a really a big problem at the Gold Coast. So yeah, he'll be one to definitely watch. I think Kostecki will be okay. I think he'll be at the front. And I think the team will get it roughly together, just based on their Adelaide. I think they've learnt a lot from Bathurst, and those little procedures and 1%ers will be fixed. Tickford, I don't have a lot of faith in. Their cars have been so wishy-washy with speed this year, and it started so well and just dropped so heavily. While I think Cam should qualify well like he usually does, I'll also be watching Randall because he could be another one that just falls out of the 10.
Yeah.
If I look at a team to most watch, it just has to be Tickford. I think Tickford are the ones that I'm worried about. I think Penrite, like you said, will be up for the challenge and will be ready to go. So, it's going to be interesting. But before we move on and ask the audience a quick question, I just want to put this in here because I saw this before we came on air, and it's Brody Kostecki's been getting some advice. He's been speaking to this guy. Now, if you don't know who that is, it's actually Tony Longhurst. And if you don't know who Tony Longhurst is, he's a great racer who once boxed in Paul Morris's head. It wasn't the other way around.
I think Tony was a little angry and decided to put one through the window. Well, not actually smash the window, but through the open window. Little Bob. Yeah.
Some good tips for him going into the finals.
There is. I did also just want to ask the question to you a bit, without notice. Do you think we're going to see any kind of team order stuff happen in the likely event that someone is in one position or another? Obviously, it's very clear that if you have a Reynolds ahead of Anton, they're going to get him to move. But what about the Tickford boys? We've seen it in the past. Randall's basically been moved out the way. What do you reckon is going to happen on that front?
I think if you're Tickford, you have to be real. And I think if Thomas was honest with himself as well, if the difference is that Cam makes it and Thomas misses, the best opportunity for that is going to be Cam. But I'm not entirely convinced that we're going to see it. I find it hard to believe. I think just the fast guys in general are going to be okay. And the ones that struggle for quality speed and that, which are your Randalls and you watch him go and stick it on fucking pole. And the Browns, they're the ones that are really in trouble. I think they're the two that I'm worried about the most because they've probably been the least consistent at getting in the 10 throughout the year of the 10 that are there, which is funny because Brown is third in the championship effectively.
Let's pose the question to the audience then.
Yeah.
Who do you think will succumb to the finals pressure? Let us know in the comments whether it's team or driver that you think will bow out. And just to remind everyone, the bottom three will be the ones that
Yep.
succumb. Who do you think will succumb to the finals pressure? Let us know in the comments.
Let's switch to a slightly hypothetical part that I put in. I'll take ownership. What if the unthinkable happens, right? Let's discuss the fact that we joked that all three Camaros go out, right? So let's hypothesize that they've gone. Big word for me. And that it's just an all-Ford affair for the last 2 rounds of the championship. Would this be a blight on the sport for its first finals campaign, do you think?
Yeah. Like, I know I'm like, obviously we're the Ford team, but I mean, it's very unlikely, but in the event that it does happen, I think, it's a big, big blight on, and you can't really do it any other way where you can't structure and make sure you have, the right teams in, to balance it. But if you really think about it, having it all Ford in a sport that has been dominated since its inception about, the battle between, different brands. I guess originally there was more brands, but really that Ford and Holden and GM has always been there. Oh my goodness. We would be able to do our own full podcast with just clips of social media posts and things, because it will go off if the Camaros all disappear after this weekend.
Sorry. Shit, I hope it happens. I'm sorry. I don't hope it happens.
You're visualizing all of those posts like, parody,
the anger will be just fucking hilarious. It'll finally be the other way around. Yeah, well, I think I agree. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying there's a blight on the championship. I think you can't force a scenario, right? And just like you can't force a Ford victory at the Mountain, even though we're lucky enough to get one this year, it is just going to be what it is. And I think we're just probably going to have to accept it to a level of whatever plays out. But I'm keen to know whether the viewership would drop as a result. Would we see people lose interest, or do you think they'd still remain even though there's no GM battle? Like, obviously they can still win a race. If it's just the Ford guys going toe to toe, will people be as interested?
I think that's an even tougher one to really kind of hypothesize or to guess at, because you're right. You definitely will have probably more casual people that are, maybe just wanting to have a little bit of involvement with the sport, and maybe they watch it after the kids' sport on the weekend or whatever. You might not get those people because they're like, oh, well, like, I don't want to watch Ford win. Even though the possibility of a Holden victory in the race is still there.
Camaro.
Oh, sorry.
Camaro.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, boomer.
Boomer. Like, it really is like, it's a big unknown. Let's say I'll be looking forward to see how Supercars can spin it if they do lose viewership, because it's all Fords left in the finals.
Scaife will quit on the spot. We need it. Let's do it. We need it.
Okay, let's do a quick crowdfunding and let's get some money to pay some drivers some cash to get rid of it. If you really say that's a possibility, Scaife to quit because of it, I'm in.
So out, mate. He would be so out. He couldn't talk up anything GM related. He couldn't froth over it. He couldn't have a wank in the box. It would be just all over for him. He'd have to quit on the spot. Jog on, Scaife. Jog on. All right,
it's just not motorsport, mate. Just not motorsport.
I'm gonna have to find that and put it in.
Yep.
All right, so we're talking about the possibility of that viewership potentially dropping off. I tend to agree. I think people will probably lose interest because they'll go, oh well, and they just be twats about it. But at the end of the day, right? If we were to think about the best outcome, right? So the worst outcome is that it is just all Ford. If we're looking at the best outcome for this, how would that look? Like going into Sandown, that is, obviously. Do you think it needs to be 3 Fords that drop out in that sense to make it more even? Or is it, one Camaro and 2 Fords? Like, what constitutes what to make it sound like how GM people think parity works? Parity.
Yeah, like I don't think there really is. I think there's a bad outcome, and if all the Camaros go, but statistically, with more forwards, you're more likely to have more all forwards drop out, right? And I don't think there's a best outcome except for those that either love the GM product and they want 3 Fords gone, or if you're hard, hard is blue and you want 3 Camaros gone. I think there's the fans will want a certain best outcome for themselves, but not the sport.
I'd agree with that, but you got to remember it's 3 Camaros and Scaife. That's a great deal. Take it.
I'll go broke for that. I've told you. I'll put up the cash.
So good. All right. So pose below. I know we've done a couple of questions here. So is the fact that GM only have 3 representatives at the first ever final series a problem for the sport? Just let us know in the comments as well. Like we ideally just want to try and get a little of this stuff, just see where everyone's at, and we can discuss it in the next one after the event. All right, so how will this weekend play out? Gold Coast is definitely going to be hectic. We've discussed that. Split field qualifying sessions. So there are 2 rounds of quali where I'm assuming it's going to be slower and faster group session. And that's both on the Saturday and Sunday. Then there are obviously the top 10 shootouts on each day. And then we have 85 lap races on both days. Big changes, as we've discussed. You've got a bit of the points there, Damo. Maybe you want to go around how the points work. And I think we should I'll insert a table here of what the point structure as it is, like the revised top 10, because it's like 3175 for Brock Feeney and 3150, I think, or something along those lines for Matty Payne. Yep. So you go through now what you get for race wins and so forth.
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 races, and so it's 150 points for the winner of either race there. And as I mentioned earlier, the core issue for a lot of these drivers for the finals is that there is a bigger points gap between first and second and third, et cetera, all the way down. So if we look at kind of like the top 15, you start at 150 points for first. It then drops to 138 points for second, 127 for third, and then you drop another 10 points for fourth. And then the sliding scale kind of continues down, and maybe that's another graph we can pop up there. But, it takes you all the way down, and in 15th, you're looking at 47 points. So if you are part of an incident and you end up down in that sort of maybe 15 to 20 range or somewhere in there, and someone else who was 9th in the championship is up in 3rd, 4th, 5th, maybe, that's a significant loss of points. And as I said, let's hope, fingers crossed, there is a live table that is happening, so they're really hamming it up, and we can actually just keep track of it as things happen. A pass is made, an incident, someone goes out. We can actually see where we stand because of those gaps. There is going to be some significant fluctuations, and when you actually look at like the current points thing, 10th to 9th at the moment. So Kai Allen to Ryan Wood, there's only 9 gap difference in the points. And so then there's another 9. And so we're not talking about huge numbers at the start of the weekend between all of these people. Between 10th and 1st, we're looking at 154 points. A nice buffer, but easily one weekend can be good night, Irene, for Brock.
Well, quite literally. Let's say, for instance, Brock has a DNF in one, finishes 10th in the other. For whatever reason, a miracle occurs and Kai Allen wins a race. Because he's won that race, regardless of what his points were, he's through.
Correct.
Right? So anyone in the 10 who wins a race is through to the next round. That automatically, you would think, based on pace alone, that 2 are going to be solidified straight off the bat, regardless of the points. Yeah, it's crazy. The point system's going to create. We're going to need the graphic. I mean, case in point, let's go back to Bathurst when Woody was, down and out in the garage, and for all intents and purposes, he was done. And then the team manages to get the car back out, and he makes up whatever positions he has to make up to then get in the 10. These are the stories that are going to be massively important. And not just if they have a crash, but how fast can the teams turn those cars back around and get them back out to just get some points, any points?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it can make a hell of a difference. And as we said, this is the first time we've run the finals, and so it's going to be a bit of an unknown for a lot of people of what do they need to look out for, how safe are they going to be, where do they land after Saturday, because the Sunday race could then, as we said, full chaos, or it could just be run of the mill, see you later, everyone is just where they are and nobody's trying to fight for their positions, and we just have the top 7 go through as per the standing.
All right, let's do a pick your top 7. Who do you think is going to progress through to Sandown? I want you guys to write it in the comments, and Damo and I are going to have a quick look through this now and put in what we think the likelihood of which 7 are going through.
I'm happy to kick off. I might do it a slightly reverse. I'm going to just tell you the 3 that I think won't make it.
Pussy.
It's the same thing, but it's just a shorter list. I think that's all. I'm gonna make the call, and I'm gonna say there's gonna be 2 Mustangs and 1 Camaro that go out.
Ooh.
I think Kai Allen. I think great that he made it. But typically hasn't shown great speed. He's always been there, just been floating around a little bit, very junior. So we understand all that, but I don't think he'll make the mustard or the cut. So he'll be out. Tommy Randall, I think I just don't see enough. I haven't seen enough really strong drives, a little bit, not aggressive, but, just being, I really want this badly. And so I don't know whether he's going to make the cut. Here's my tip. And I think Anton. I reckon Will might end up getting close, but he will go through. And I think, Anton, just don't, I'm not sure whether they're just not consistent enough, I don't think. He has gone well there in the past, but I'm going to make the call and say he's out.
Okay. So you're saying Ryan Wood progresses along with Chaz Mostert, Brody Kosecki, Waters, Brown, Payne, and Feeney. All right.
Correct.
Okay, so I've got a slightly wilder take.
I bet. 3 Camaros are out.
No. I'm with you in the fact that I think Tommy Randall will fall out. And I'm with you that Kai Allen will likely fall out. But the Camaro that I actually think will fall out is Brown.
Hot take.
I think his 2025 championship comes to an end at Gold Coast, and it's all down to his poor qualifying. He's only got a 75-point buffer from the others, and I can see him toppling over. So, so I think Will Brown in a lot of trouble. So that leaves Brock Feeney, Matthew Payne, Cam Waters, Brody Kosecki, Chaz Mostert, Anton De Pasquale, and Ryan Wood as my top 7 going into Sandown.
Whilst that would be delicious, I really hope he's not, because he's definitely someone that could cause some forwards some problems, and he might help his teammate win. So I really hope that that's not the case.
You want him in just because he can cause drama? Got it.
And then he'll drop out before Adelaide, and we'll be right.
Look, my whole theory of them all going out now means that Sandown doesn't matter where it's a Camaro dominated track.
Yeah,
might be a hot take, but
that.
I'm pretty accurate. But let's move on, because it's been a case of musical chairs and Supercars silly season. Well, we've had a bit of a crazy week, haven't we? A lot of announcements, Damo. So in the mix, for the movement in the sport, or not in the mix, it's happening. LeBrock from Erebus, The Great Escape, to Matt Stone Racing, or back to Matt Stone Racing. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Stanaway, have a career, mate. See you later. Golding from Premier to Blanchard Racing Team. Jaden Ojeda in at Premier Racing, the Juice. Declan Fraser also in at Premier Racing. Excuse me. The SCT car going from BJR to Triple Eight. Jackson Walls making his debut in the SCT car at Triple Eight. And Roland Dane returns at Premier. All right. There's a lot going on there. So let's just, let's have a quick chat about each individual one. So LeBrock to Matt Stone Racing, Damien. Feeling around that?
I think it's an okay move. I think it's good for LeBrock. I'm more intrigued as to why. Was it someone being pushed? Is someone not happy? It just feels like he was the prodigal son returning to his mate Barry Ryan, and just didn't really last too long. And we've obviously got some juniors coming in, but I think it's a good move for Jack, but intrigued as to the why.
Word on the street is that 2 years ago, Erebus promised the seat to Job for next year. So if that's the case, I believe Jack heard this and then decided to take things into his own hands, which is fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Richie Stanaway, have a career. Is it over? Are we clapping him out? Is that all done?
I think we take the opportunity to say goodbye because, he's had a few goes in and out of the sport, and it hasn't been, I think this has been his best effort. I know he won, obviously, as a co-driver with Sandown, but and Bathurst, of course, but like in terms of his own driving career, he's done okay, but just hasn't really nailed it. And I'll be intrigued to see whether anyone picks him up as a co-driver or whether it's just Stanaway out.
Yeah, well, that's the big question, whether he wants to be a co-driver again or not. I think he could definitely be a co-driver again with no problems, and he's definitely quick enough to be a good co-driver. But he's just not quick enough in the main game for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but it just doesn't matter what equipment he seems to be in. It doesn't seem to work out. So, and that's not to say it's been a bad career. It's hard enough to make it there, let alone have a couple of shots at it over his tenure. So well done, mate. And if this is the end.
I was just going to say, let's start a hot rumor.
Oh, no.
As someone that didn't have a great campaign over the Enduros, and Stanaway's got a great history with this team as a co-driver. Win Cup out, Stanaway in.
Oh, God.
Probably not.
Win Cup's ego's too hard, too large for that. He won't give up the seat for just anyone.
Righto, let's keep going.
All right, so moving on, we've got Golding departing Premier Racing and heading to Blanchard Racing Team. Feeling around that? It's Triple Eight customer deal for next year for Blanchard, I believe.
Yes, it is. So I guess that part will be more intriguing. Yeah, I'm not sure this is going to be. I don't know.
Growing pains. Growing pains.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure Golding's got it in him to kind of be the driver to lead the team to probably where it needs to go. But let's hope we are pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think that there's been some change in that team, and they have had an upward trajectory since that change
Yep.
within. So I'm slightly more confident, but we also know that Triple Eight machinery doesn't guarantee anything.
No.
Hello, Premiere. So we'll just wait and see with bated breath on how that all unfolds. But look, hopefully for Golding's sake, that they give him something to go well in, and if he can, even if he gets around the 10, I think that's a pretty good result for most. Jaden Ojeda and Declan Fraser both announced at Premier Racing. Roland Dane back at the helm. Let's add that in there.
Yeah, let's tick off the whole Premier thing, hey? So Jaden, great. I think challenging team, but there's no better timing to go to that team than when you have one of the great dictators of a team coming in, and he just knows how to get shit done, Roland Dane, and he will shake up. So I'll touch on Roland in a second. Juice, nice work. Congratulations on getting the seat. Declan Fraser, I think it's a good second seat for them, but it will be one that he will need to make sure he starts performing, getting on top of things early, because it does have that it does have that hallmark of fails for half a year or for 8 months of the year, and then they're starting to look elsewhere and say, hey, you're not going to cut it, you're out. So
I think
yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'm looking at those two, Juice is going to towel him up because of just pure seat time that Ojeda's had across the board in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. He does a lot of the GT programs and so forth with Merck.
Yeah.
I just think that's going to be crucial for going into a full season of supercars. So yeah, I purely expect that Jaden will be faster. I might be pleasantly surprised by Fraser, but yeah, I won't be if that's the case.
Roland Dane.
Dane, hey. How do I feel about Roland Dane 2.0? Well, 1.0 was ruthless, painful, and annoying. So I expect 2.0 to be grouchy along with the original. That fair?
Well, I do. I think the biggest shakeups will obviously be to have a look at who remains in the team now that Roland's at the helm. So will he be making cuts? Yeah, so that will be one to watch. But the other dynamic that we can't underpin is that you'll then have, from a commission point of view, you'll have Roland Dane effectively being one of the lead Camaros up against his old team, Duddo and Jamie, in the same boardroom deciding against Ford and Camaro stuff. That needs to be telecast. Oh, I'd love to see the inside of on that the vision and the soundboard of how Roland's going to handle that, and just watching Jamie go, oh yes, Roland.
Considering the sheer amount of rookies that are on there, maybe it is time for Drive to Survive supercar style.
Yes.
Yeah. Nah, look, I think Roland is going to be painful for a lot of people. So we'll just see. And that's not a blight against him. That is just purely the way he goes about it. And he's ruthless and takes no prisoners. So you just got to, you're going to have to be tough. So. That's how he gets the results. That's how he cheats and wins. I mean, sorry, it gets the advantage and wins. Engineers the advantage and wins. Got it. Moving on. SCT from BJR to Triple Eight and Jackson Walls. Before we went to air, officially confirmed, as we had been told by our source about a week ago, bringing some money with him, mate. How do we feel about that?
Well, I guess
come on, get off the fence.
I hate it. I hate it. Perfect. Only because as a Eofi stereotype, and which as a stereotype, it's mostly true, not always. is that those people aren't the best drivers, and then whether you're in Triple Eight gear or not, it's not going to make a lot of difference. Look, do I think he's an outstanding driver? He's good. I'm not sure he's. I think there are probably at least 3 other drivers I could think of that I would have as someone ahead of him, and so it does sort of feel like the money's talking.
Yeah, look, Rylan Gray, Bates, Jackson Evans. Like there's so many that I would have in that spot before.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, when I first heard that it was as Jackson, I had to go back and have a look because I hadn't actually really heard anything of him or what he'd achieved. And look, it's okay. Good, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not standout, and that's nothing against the kid. I'm sure there's reasons why, because he's a Triple Eight prodigy, so they have been keeping an eye on him. So there must be a reason why. Hopefully we see that, but
yeah,
at the moment, it feels very Lance Strollish, doesn't it? Whereby it's just money gets you there, and it doesn't bring the results you need.
Do you think BJR, well, I should say, sorry, BJR, SCT, moving from BJR to Triple Eight, do you think that's going to get the performance they're kind of chasing or they're wanting?
Yes, because it's in-house, but not with that driver. Yeah. I think they were hoping, I mean, there was the strong rumor that they were trying to get Chaz.
Didn't that pop up? And it's like, oh my goodness, like, Chaz. Imagine getting Chaz to move from an incoming Toyota to interesting rumor. I still don't know why that rumor popped up. Like, what was the motivation behind it? Was Chaz in contract negotiations and just trying to bump his number? Were they just trying to stir the pot? Like, there's got to be a reason why Chaz popped up out of nowhere.
His name popped up. That's all that matters. But look, I think Bates was probably the other one that was in contention really for that seat. I don't know. I'm struggling with it a little bit. We'll see how it goes. We'll either be very, very right or we'll be pleasantly surprised.
True.
Pleasant. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Either way, if Jack Smith's in that car and co-enduro next time, that's not a good thing, especially for results. All right. So, you just sort of spoke about it. We're getting a lot of discussion happening, and we've had a lot of driver movement this year, probably more than I was ever anticipating. Why is this happening now, considering it's not like it's a rule change or it's just weird?
It is, and there's been no real, how like in years gone by, there's been one significant change that seems to spark a whole, raft of changes with the other teams.
Yep.
And it really hasn't been any of that. It's just been a whole bunch of the, majority of the mid-pack and lower teams just all going, right, we're shuffling the decks, we're making a change. And, some of it has been car related because you've got Triple Eight going to Mustangs, and so you've got a few people switching out there. And I guess the simple fact that now we've also lost one of those Toyotas, and that third car is on its own. Like, where do they get service? Do the pit go up with BJR or Triple Eight? Do they, like, where's that? That's going to be an interesting one. But we've got so many Mustangs next year that there's no real reason for the changes, but it's certainly caused a stir.
It's firming up very much as a Mustang Cup at the moment. Not, and that's probably not a good thing. I will say that, like, as much as, for the first time ever, there'll be more Fords on the grid than any other manufacturer ever. That doesn't mean that's a good thing. Like, I didn't like it when the GM had majority because that's how they get the majority of wins, right? Because they have just pure force of numbers being able to take it out. and I don't like it the other way either. I've always been one that has said that I would prefer that if there's an even keel of cars for each manufacturer in there. Now I understand that it can't be perfectly even, but I mean as close to as we can get, right? So we've lost a Toyota, we've lost another Camaro. Well, sorry, no, not a Camaro because it was going to Toyota. It just,
Well, it's going to lose
yeah,
that anyway. Yeah.
it's like I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because in my actual belief, and this is where people maybe think we are really biased, but this is not what I'm saying. But the actual Ford teams, for the majority, are the stronger teams, other than Triple Eight. That's why the ladder as it is right now has turned out the way it is, because the actual Ford teams are stronger than the bottom Camaro teams. There's a big gap between them and Triple Eight, what Triple Eight deliver.
And we noticed that in the change with WAU when they were obviously, they had the Commodores and they moved to Fords, that was one of the other teams that was, on the red side for the red side of the pack. They lost a set, and that was really a team that was always kind of up at that pointy end, and they moved to Ford, and they're still kind of up that pointy end. So, it'll be interesting to see, because I think we will possibly notice a fair bit. If it doesn't go well for GM, we're going to see that fallout through the fan base, and that's going to be one thing to watch for next year.
All right. Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything, mate. So good chat. We've got some racing to unfold this weekend, so we do get to see get our first finals experience and see how that comes out. I hope you all tune in for it, because honestly, I think it's going to be really exciting. Let us know in the comments what of the changes that have occurred you most excited about seeing unfold in 2026.
Driver changes, car changes. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. All right.
It's going to be huge. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, at the Valve Bounce, Damo and Steve, you know where we are across the board. We've got to go and do an F1 podcast. So we'll see you in that one.